Well, hey, I don't really have much to go over, and I'm speaking at a VMUG, which is a VMware user group thing. Ooh, I better check my schedule here and see when I'm doing it, because it's always good to show up to a scheduled talk. But it's the scheduled time to talk here, and also I wanted to try out using using YouTube as the place that I stream to, which I think would be better. I don't know. The first thing that I need to figure out is actually being able to see if my stream is working or not, which is always an annoying thing to work on. Oh, but I'd have to add an account there. Anyways, so hopefully it's working. That would be wonderful. So let me go over. There's a few, like, we have someone internally who collects together all the relevant information in our space, competitive stuff, news articles. It's really actually quite fun to read through. It's a great to have that as a service, something that someone is doing. I enjoy it quite a bit, and there's a couple of things that they found that I thought would be great to go over. Sorry if I'm being a little weird here. I am trying to load up the studio to see how this is working. Like I said, I wanted to test out using YouTube here, and this is a good part of the test to see what's happening. Go streaming right now. That's right. Yep. Yep. We got that. Everything's cool. How come I can't see it? Very weird that it's not actually showing me what I'm doing. So again, I apologize. Let me go look at the channel and see if I can actually see myself talking. Oh yeah, there we go. For some reason, I can't log into the studio, but I can definitely see myself talking, which I guess is a little weird. Let's see. Oh, although that doesn't appear to be going nicely. First of all, let's put some music on. That one's not playing. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I at least got that. But then, let me check over here. Why does the audio not work? I was having problems with this a while back. The mic doesn't seem to be going through. But the other thing I should do, I remember Safari has been having some problems with getting the audio through in videos. Yep, sure enough. Okay, so sorry about that. I messed up on the audio there. Let me do a little adjusting here. Anyhow. So I can pause this and I'll just be able to kind of look at the chat window. So let's take a look at the stuff I was mentioning. And I think that, first of all, if you wanted to go to the, let me find the link to the UK VMUG, because if you want to attend that, it's actually free to attend. And I'm going to be giving a talk there in, let me check that, in, at like, let me try to convert this, at 10:45 London time, which is like 11:45 my time. And it's the DevOps metric one, if you remember that. But I'll go ahead and put a link to that in here in case you're interested in attending it. So come see my metrics talk at VMUG UK. Oh. So that's the first thing. You know, I've got a recording of the metrics talk around here somewhere. If you go to tanzutalk.com and look that up, you can find it. But let's come over here. Let me clean this up. And we will go look my stuff up. Let me switch over to the screen so you can see what we're doing here. There, of course, is Twitter. So I use the service called Pinboard. It's kind of the successor of Delicious, if you remember that, from what I guess we call the Web 2.0 days. Anyways, it's where I bookmark all the interesting things that I find around. I think it's a really great service. I'll put a link here if you want to go to it. But let me look at a couple of things that I thought is kind of worth looking at in our little realm here of Tanzu Talk time. First of all, let me promote myself. Speaking of Twitter, let's go over here and say, check out today's Tanzu Talk. Live right now, going over not much of anything, going over a few recent articles about cloud native stuff that I think are interesting. Multi-cloud real, all the great Kubernetes value props. I'll call this one a company chooses uni-cloud and 2. All right. So we'll put that there. I think I'm doing the right thing here. Does anyone know? I certainly don't. So those are the 2 articles I want to go over. One, there's it was posted at the CNCF site, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, but as a reprint from, I think, a consultancy firm that does Kubernetes stuff. Which is fine. You gotta do your consultancy stuff. I want to look at that article because I think it's like a great write-up of like all the value props of Kubernetes. And of course, if you're in the Kubernetes area, especially if you're in marketing or whatever it is I do, your thought leadering or talking, or if you're, someone advocating for Kubernetes, you're always explaining and being asked to write some piece about like explaining why it's great. And I think this piece, we can just use this piece from now on. We don't need to keep rewriting this stuff because it's well done and it has it all. And then after that, there's TechCrunch had a write-up that was fantastic, like very well done. And I'm guessing that Google PR and comms people like helped them out with it. Totally fine. That's what we do as well. But it's a great kind of like pretty in-depth article with lots of interview from someone at Sabre, which is like a back end for travel sites, booking hotels and airlines, I presume trains, cars, stuff like that. And I think overall it's a really nice article to kind of look through. So why don't we go through that? And first of all, let me fix this. There we go. So I want to go over that just to kind of like have a different view, a totally competitive to us and our way of thinking. But it's basically the framing is they eschewed, they don't really care about multi-cloud, which, as we'll get into, it kind of depends, as always, what you mean by multi-cloud. But we'll take a look at it. So first, let's dive into this. Because again, I think this is a great article, and we can stop writing these articles and just refer people to what we have here. I'll put this in the chat. So here you got 5 benefits. Now, whenever you're writing a top list like this, you got to have an odd number. You want to have 3. 5 is pretty good. if you're really trying to show off, you could have 7. Like that's a fun thing to do there. But first of all, this article, I'm not going to read it to you, but I think it's great. Like, it doesn't really get off into the weeds. This is what you might have for an executive audience who doesn't want to get into the technology-based way of saying stuff. But it kind of gives you an overview of what a lot of us would say, and you know what the point of Kubernetes is, right? Like, and I was on the VMware community podcast. I don't know, a couple days ago. I'll have to see if I can find a link to it if it's posted. And they brought up the good point that, like, you know, everyone's always talking about how Kubernetes is complex and it's hard to get up and running and so forth and so on, you know, all the kind of stressing. And so, like, is it worth it? Like, what are we getting from it? And I think this is a valid point, as I mentioned, a lot to ask. And I think it also gets to the point that us vendors and other, like, Kubernetes advocates need to start being a little careful about talking about how complex it is. Because that sort of starts to, like, beg the question of, like, well, so why would I use that? And this is kind of what is going on here, is to tell you the real benefits of it, right? And, you know, let me bring up, I think we did some of our own, you know, we have our surveying, and I think, well, let me go over what's here for claiming the article is so stupendous, superb. But it has a good write of that, right? And it's basically that you can do software in a new, more modern way, a cloud native way, because it supports that. And it has the, you know, it has the abstraction layer that it just makes using, kind of ironically, like, it makes using a variety of hardware easier. I don't think that's true at all. So pretend I didn't say that. See, if I was editing this, I would go back and erase that. But it allows you to do basically like a different style of development, a new iteration of doing a distributed application, do microservices or serverless, whatever you want to talk about. And because it's brutally is like too whatever of a word, but because it really reduces down the types of infrastructure and how you work with them, and tries to have only kind of one way, a very limited way, it does add more portability. The same way that if you're using a Java VM, it gives you portability because you write to the Kubernetes layer instead of writing to the infrastructure underneath there. Now, there's always all sorts of, like, once you start using things that are only available in one place, you don't have portability. So you got to think about that, right? Like, that's just, there's not much portability between spoken languages. If you're locked into learning that language, you can't really take very much. That's not true. You can, you know, especially Western languages, there's a lot of shared things, but it's hard to take something between, like, Japanese and Italian, I would imagine. Not much portability in concepts there. But, you know, it goes over basically, and it's also faster, better resource use. Like, there's, you know, it tells you what it does here and how it works. Now, you know, you can see that in the advantages. Here's, like, my version of that slide, right? It gives you capabilities that you have. It has lots of great advantages according to surveys. So that's the first part here, is we're defining what Kubernetes does. Then we go into the 5 advantages, and I've already kind of gotten to some of these. So this is, like, again, look at this as if you've ever, like, had to write this kind of stuff or talk about it. This is all more or less pretty non-technically done, right? I don't know if it mentions, let's see if it talks about YAML. No, or pods. It probably says container. Yeah, of course. But it doesn't really even talk about, you know, let alone ingress and egress. Does it even have load balancer? So this article, and this is why it's a good version of this executive level article. You can't see it, but executive. People love to say that. It does show you basically what that looks like, right? Not speaking about a technology. So then we go to the advantages. So it makes deploying your software faster, reduces development time, and it gives you, you know, a little bit of the reason why that does that. But that's the main point. You can get software out the door faster, right? And then you can optimize costs. And, you know, this is probably true in the long term. It hasn't really been long enough to see if that's true, but there is, you know, the idea of packing as much container-based processes as possible onto your compute. You know, that looks like it would optimize costs. The the idea that you don't have to like run a full, the fully loaded, scaled out infrastructure. That should reduce costs. All of these things should reduce costs. Now, usually what you find is that you don't pocket those savings, but it's more like a balloon. Instead, you take that money and that time and you go spend it on something else, right? So the idea, I guess that's what optimizing is versus saving costs, but you got to pay attention to that kind of closely. It just means that you spend less time on toil and other wasted things. And again, it doesn't really tell you why. It just says that it does it, which is a hallmark of executive level, not technical communication there. So then, what's built into Kubernetes is being able to scale up and being scalable and resilience, right? So you got all that going on, and it kind of tells you, the components that provide it, but it doesn't really tell you how it does it. Then you've got another section here, number 4, that's it'll run on multiple environments, right? So not only will it run, it'll run on private cloud, public cloud, multiple public clouds, on the edge. Or, edge really, I think, is starting to mean more of what we used to call robo, which is remote office and branch office, which is just a smaller data center somewhere than a centralized data center and the public cloud. And the edge could probably also be like a car, if you really, squint and think about it. But, which is to say that people will say on the edge, but I think it's more appropriate to say in the edge. Like if you were in a warehouse or a big box retail store, things like that. Anyways, edge is a fun way of putting it, but it just means like a small cloud running somewhere. So you have portability to run over that, because that's one of the whole points of Kubernetes, is that we are normalizing. We're providing a layer on top of that defines what infrastructure looks like instead of all the various places that you run it. You're locking yourself into that, but it's a good lock-in that you're choosing, essentially. And then there's also the ability, like, this is a bit based on, I wouldn't say this is a stretch, but it makes doing this easier than not, right? Like, it's worth your time using the good definition that Kubernetes has, the way it really reduces down what infrastructure looks like for compute, networking, and storage, and also the policy of load balancing. A lot of configuration and policy is expressed in Kubernetes, and I think people don't always go over that in much depth. But it's a good way of modeling all of that out, and because of the multi-cloud nature, it gives you some portability to migrate things. It makes it a little easier to do that. So, and then there's a mention of 2 case studies here. This is where, if we were doing it, we would only talk about our customers who were successful, hopefully ones that could be named. I'll have to go look up the Italian company here. I don't really know that one. But, that's basically, you should read it on your own, because I've done a bad job summarizing it. But this is the basic bones and a really concise take on any executive version of why Kubernetes is good that you'll ever read. I don't think we ever need to write another one again, although I'm sure we will, because this one is very well done, goes over everything, covers it, and even has some case studies down here. They should Creative Commons it so we can just, I'll take it and remix it to our own desires. But you can check that article out. Now, the second one that I wanted to go over, let me check in on the conference stuff over here. Yep, I think I'm still cool. I'm not going to miss doing it. Let me check my email in case someone's emailing me, freaking out about stuff. Nope, no freaking out. So, the next one that I think is fun to look at, instead of, all multi-cloud and portability, is let's look at this write-up that I have to admit I haven't read in great detail, but there's some fun stuff in there. Where is it? Why is Sabre betting against multi-cloud? Now, the framing here, I think, is not quite exact, right? Because what Sabre actually says in here is we've got a whole bunch of on-premise stuff that we want to move to Google Cloud. So they're choosing a cloud. And there is some commentary about how, like, multi-cloud, whatever, right? Like, they're more interested in actually moving their stuff somewhere. So you can see, and what makes this great is it's kind of a end-to-end history of how Sabre wanted to move their stuff to cloud. Now, again, what Sabre is it's the back end for a lot of travel things, reservation systems, booking systems. Chances are there's also Amadeus here in Europe is another one. I'm sure there's other ones, but like if you're going through and like looking for airplanes or hotels or things like that, chances are high you're going to be, not you, but whatever software you're using is going to be interacting with Sabre and pulling data from them and working with them. So it's a pretty big part of life, what they do, and you can imagine the scale of it and the workloads. It's an interesting setup that they have. So this is where things are interesting, right? So you can see where people start to think about multi-cloud, right? Because when you're kicking off what you're doing, you don't really know what you're going to end up choosing, what platform you're going to choose. So you want to give yourself as much optionality as possible. You want to give yourself options. If we put all this effort into one stack that we ended up not wanting to use, and the result was good, but for whatever reason we don't want that stack because of cost, because the lack of innovation on it, or whatever, right? Obviously, if you're using it for a while, enough to get locked into it, you found lots of benefits from it. Otherwise, you would have stopped using it. Unless it was just like, oh, I don't want to go to procurement again and get someone to pay up for it, which I think is probably a very real way that a lot of enterprise software persists. Someone should probably fix that. I don't know. Not my department. But you can see that they wanted this optionality, so they kind of were thinking about doing multi-cloud, and they put that in there as a strategy. And then what they say is that, and this is where, like, I'll defer to them because they're the ones who did it. But in their case, it meant that they, and this is kind of like, if you do not, this is my comment about if you use something that's only available in one cloud, you are locked into that cloud, right? And so if you take the approach that you're not going to use anything unique to a public cloud or your on-premise stuff, and you're going to use only what's available on all of them, then you do end up in the situation where it's a least common denominator, right? Which is to say, you can only use the things that are common to all the clouds, which, if you think about it, means that you don't get to use any of the unique features, the differentiating stuff from those clouds that you might get an advantage from. So when you get to that point, and then this is also kind of could have been detailed a lot more. Like, if I remember, ITA is like another travel backend that does all sorts of stuff. And if now when did let's look this up, because I think this is kind of a huge driver. What is ITA? I know it's some kind of travel thing. So they say Google's acquisition of ITA, which gave you new. Yep, that's right. But what is? And I also forgot Google acquired Apogee. That's kind of fun. I wonder what. Wonder how that's going. I don't really hear the word Apogee. I think they renamed it something, right? So April. Yeah. So what is the Travel Insight, formerly independent company? What do they do? Programming puzzles. So I don't know. I don't want to sit here and learn too much. It's basically just a good way of searching over travel stuff and kind of putting things together. So that is an incredibly differentiating aspect. You're in the travel industry, and they have a major hunk of travel software. Makes it very attractive. And then also Google is always famed for its AI and machine learning stuff. I don't know. So this is a good, like, man, this is like whatever Google PR person, and I assume they were involved, like, boom, they got their value props right in there. Very, very well written and everything. So good job there. But you go down and you see that essentially the strategic decision that Sabre made is that they wanted to benefit from the unique things on this cloud. And so they decided that a multi-cloud approach was not appropriate for them. And there's probably some other things about having one vendor and things like that that would be interesting. Now, I don't know, to say this is like a uni-cloud thing. I think it's more of just some nuance around this idea of multi-cloud. And I would say you shouldn't really do multi-cloud driven by a fear of lock-in, because you're going to encounter this common denominator problem. But instead, you should use multi-cloud because you probably are going to be managing all of your own stuff still, all the stuff that's on premise. And you will want to take advantage of all the options that you can, right? Like you'd want to take advantage of what Google has. There's probably things at Amazon you might want to take advantage of. So you will be sort of locking into those systems as you do anything that's unique and differentiating. That's why it's differentiating. Otherwise, it would be common, the lowest common denominator they call here. But you put in some framework so that you can use all of those things as needed, and it becomes less of a nightmare for managing, which I think is fine. But anyways, I think this article is great because it gives you an overview of kind of at a very large scale, at a large organization, a big enterprise. It gives you a notion of how one company thought through the strategy that they had and where they ended up. It'll be fun to check in on that and see how things are going. Well, I better make sure that I have time for my the talk that I'm giving in a little bit. As always, if you want to get the archives for this show, I need to work on this blog a little bit, but you can go to tanzutalk.com. You can go right up here and click on videos. There's our playlist right there. Let's check in on how the playlist is doing. You can see that we have, and by we, I mean me, there's a ton of videos, which I have totally messed up by messing around with the page here. Oh, there we go. But there's plenty of videos to look through, all sorts of exciting things. Here is the one. Let's see where the DevOps, the metrics one is. I'll put a link to that here if DevOps metrics. Yeah, here we go. So this is the talk I'm going to be giving in 20 minutes. Again, just kind of scroll back in the chat and you can see for free. I think you can go to the UK VMUG I'm going to be speaking at. Now, if you'll allow me a little bit more self-promotion, let me show you one more thing. So if you remember, I streamed a little while back, last week I think, my is Kubernetes for Developers talk. Now, that might still be available on Twitch. No, I deleted it because there was a slide in there that I was unsure about the copyright usage for, or where I had gotten that slide. So, better safe than sorry. I removed it. Oh, I don't have my talks on here. That's kind of weird. Anyways, I removed it, and therefore I removed the recording. But in the actual one that I did, where is it? I changed it, and now you can see that. Oh, I see what happened here. I need to move this up to the top. Anyways. But so this recording is out from the conference that I spoke at. You have to go in a little while. There's some small talk, as they say at the beginning. Totally fine. But you can see, I think that talk turned out really well, and I might think about giving it some more. I'm always a little dodgy on this topic because I don't have firsthand usage of Kubernetes, so I feel like I'm not authoritative on it at all, but more I'm just aggregating what other people are saying. So anyhow, I need to go fix up my page here. Let's see. Like if you go to my page, there should be, what am I listing? Yeah. So I do have it there. It's just, wonder if I should put that one on top of there or not. All right. Well, if you're for some reason in America or an American, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy it. We're going to have a nice Thanksgiving this afternoon. Of course, here in the Netherlands, this will be a shock to my American friends. They don't actually celebrate Thanksgiving. It's just another regular day. But that does mean that you can easily go to the grocery store if you've forgotten something. They may not have, pumpkin pies and stuff there, but it won't be closed. That's always a problem on Thanksgiving, is you end up having to go to the grocery store for missing ingredients, and they often are closed. Not going to be a problem here. But I'll be back next week, Tuesday and Thursday, and so forth and so on. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.